and welcome to MIT Sloan's virtual reunion. My name is Lauren Watchkin, and I am the Director of Alumni Experience here at MIT Sloan. I'm so excited to be here today to kick off this very special session we have for you today. Joining us today are two people who I am sure need no introduction from me, Rod Garcia and Sloan alumna Kerry James. We are so happy to have them both here. Kerry to celebrate this specific reunion milestone as a graduate of the MBA class of 2001, and Rod to kick off your retirement tour. As a reminder to our attendees, you can submit questions at any time during this discussion by using the Q&A panel in the virtual attendee hub. We will get to as many as we can. Thank you all for being here. And at this point, I would love to ask Kerry and Rod to turn on their cameras, and I will turn it over to them for a very fun session.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Welcome, Rod. It's so exciting to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, exactly. And normally, and of course, we would be in the same place and hanging out and chatting about the good old times, but we both live in Boston, so hopefully we'll get to see each other soon.
Right.
So welcome to all of you for joining us. It's a pleasure to be here with Rod Garcia, Assistant Dean of the MIT Sloan Admissions, now retired.
Thank you.
And Rod, you've had such an incredible 30 years at MIT Sloan. So we're going to be excited to hear some of your stories and some of the insights and some of your favorite moments over the past 3 decades. And I'd love to start at the beginning. And I'll start at the beginning by saying, you know, the Sloan class of 1991 was really your first incoming class. They're experiencing their, congratulations to all of them on their 30th reunion year. What was it like to manage your first admission cycle?
Right. Well, first of all, it was a very small class back then, much more manageable. I think we started about 180. That was the class size, plus the LFMs, Leaders for Manufacturing program, which started in 1988. That was the first class. So I met that first class of LFMs. So it's 180 plus the 50 LFMs. And so it was much smaller. And I believe at that time we had about 2,000 applications. And now we're dealing with over 6,600 applications. So, you know, it's much bigger applicant pool compared to the previous class. And back then, you'll remember this, when you applied, it was all paper, right? So you submitted your application on a piece of paper. You had a typewriter, you typed everything on the typewriter, and you put it in the mail. And the only way you'll find out if you're admitted was you got the thick envelope.
I remember the thick envelope.
Right, exactly right. Thank goodness you do not remember the thin envelope, which is another story, right? So we would send all that at 5 o'clock on deadline dates, signed. And what I would do is we would even put up, a stamp on the envelope, and we would drop it off at the post office because it had to be postmarked by 5 o'clock. And now it's all easy. I mean, there's no with electronic application on the day of the deadline. We know exactly how many people applied. We know, the diversity in terms of gender, nationality, and when we send our decisions, it's sent at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, not at 5. And at 3:05, you'll hear from rejects asking you, why was I rejected? In the past, that letter matured. So they had time to think about it and reflect on why they were not accepted. But right now they react that very, so there are some efficiencies and also inefficiencies, but it's all fun. It is all fun and really a privilege. I tell you, I mean, it's a privilege to read applications, a privilege to change people's lives, but also to become part of their lives as well. I mean, you and I remember the BBI trip we did back in 2001.
I couldn't forget it for the life of me. It's such a great time.
Absolutely. So it's been going on, and unfortunately, I think, last year that it didn't happen. It didn't happen again this year. So I think we may have seen the end of it, but who knows? Students are always creative and innovative. So I heard there's a group of students in Puerto Rico right now. So, yeah, but yeah, so that is, nearly 33 years of my life. And, knowing a lot of people come through the
Yeah.
doors and leave the doors. I mean, they are my friends. They're my family. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember for 1 or 2 seasons, I read applications for
Uh-huh.
MIT Sloan. And
Yes.
I remember that process of getting to know people. And I would love to hear how, I know every application is read, so that's
Yeah.
always exciting, at least once, at least twice, I think it is. I'd love to think about how digitalization has changed how you do the job of admissions and how you think about, seeing and finding these characteristics within a digital world.
Right. Well, I'll tell you the practicalities, right? So back when it was paper-based application, I'd travel around the world and interview folks, and I had this huge bag. I was carrying applications, in my bag. And when I arrive at a place, there's a FedEx waiting for me, and that's applications for the next city. So lugging those applications, your interview, and I think a lot of people who graduated, in the early years will remember the times when I would have paper applications with me in the interview room. So it all has changed. It's all, on iPad now, or on a Mac, and it's very efficient because the data is right there in front of you, and you can always look up a student who you interviewed 5 years ago. I mean, it's still there. You remember your notes, all the notes that you made, and it reminds you of the good experience that I had when I interviewed them. But I think having a digital application gives students the ability to, or applicants the ability to present themselves. And we have video essays now. That's the other thing. We got rid of the essays, so you don't have to write 5 essays. It's all a 1-minute video. And believe me, this generation of people are very savvy, very savvy. But not only that, even with that 1-minute video, you get to know them, which is really interesting. I mean, that 1-minute video gives you a picture of the person. And so you have sort of a picture of the person you're interviewing. And, I think it's, and I think my successors, will benefit from technology. Yeah.
Yeah. So a 1-minute video that gives you an insight into the personality of the person.
Right.
And
Right.
and it kind of makes me wonder, you've seen, 14,000 admits over the last 3+ decades from many different countries, and everyone is different. I'm kind of curious, how do you see the common thread, the common DNA that says, you know what, that's a Sloanie?
Yeah. Well, I think it is about, first of all, they show knowledge of the school, right? So, I mean, first of all, if they did their research, right? So if there's, and you also know if they've talked to folks, and you will also know if they're really sincere about, about wanting to, and I think that's a key. It's about wanting to be part of Sloan, wanting to be here. I think that is important, because we want people who really want to be here. And I think that's something that makes Sloanies different from other schools. And after all, these are folks that we live with for 2 years, right? So these are folks that we deal with, right? So we choose very carefully. And we're happy with the results. The other thing is, I mentioned this to a lot of folks, right? I mean, you cannot do this job for as long as I have if you don't believe in what you do. And also if you don't believe, and I'm sorry for using this word, if you don't believe in the product. I'm sorry for using that word, but I believe in the product, and I believe in what we do. And I think, with those 2 elements, you're all set in this job. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you think back, what's been a few of the pivotal experiences and transition points that have shaped your career at Sloan? It sounds like things have evolved over time, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts. What's changed?
Yeah. I mean, I actually had, interestingly, on the very last day that I made my admit call, I went back to the first admit call I made back in 1990. I don't remember the first person I called, but I remember the last person I called in the class of 91. And I'm hoping to see that person, in this year's reunion. And I look back, right? And I look back at the career. There were some key moments there, that I can look back and say, I'm glad to be part of, MIT. So the first of all, the first thing was traveling to Boston. Never been to Boston for the job interview. Stayed at the Marriott, Cambridge Marriott. Got a window, a nice view of the city from Cambridge, and seeing that Citgo sign and seeing the lights at Fenway was just, that to me was memorable. That's when I said, I really want to be in this city. The second was interviewing with the MBA program staff, my former boss and the other folks like, Cindy Hill, Dave Weber, names that you know, right? And, after that interview, I said, I really want to work with these folks. I want them to be my colleagues. And I said that if I didn't get the job, I would be very disappointed because I thought this was the right place for me, and I did get the job, so I came, right. So that's pivotal, and there were also some really key moments, in the admissions office. So the first 3 months, my boss Peggy Margaret Tyler Jones went to MIT Central and became the assistant dean there for graduate studies. So there I was left alone in January making decisions, right, with no experience. So that's how I learned my craft, with that. And then we hired an alum who became the director of admissions, and she was in the job, for 2 years. And, because she had to raise her second child, she left. And again, in the middle of the admission season, I took over, and, and I learned the craft. And then finally, I guess, so there was one other person who moved in and then left. And after that, my boss at that time, it was Jeffrey Barks. A lot of people remember Jeffrey Barks, just said, you're it. You're now the director. So there was no search. So, but that's a kind of place, that's what MIT is, right? I mean, back then it was a small place. We had a lot of autonomy, and people knew you and had faith in what you did and had faith in me. And so, yeah, they're very happy. So lots of pivotal moments. The other pivotal moment, as I remember, and this has nothing to do with admissions, was I think back in 1996 or 97, I think, January 97, a couple of students who were in the class of 98 approached me and brought up the idea of, why don't we go to the Virgin Islands and do the graduation trip? So
that was only in 1998?
That was it was a class of 98, actually. There was also a class before that, 97, who did it. But in 98, I said, oh, let's do that. So we started that trip in the US Virgin Islands. And I think there were 30 of us, 5 boats. And the following year in 99, there were like over 100 and 20 boats. So, they became my friends, right? I mean, these folks, when you're with them for 2 weeks, right? You share towels, because towels never get dry, exactly right. So, because in that humidity, so it all, you become one with them. So yeah.
I remember you being on our trip as well, and what a great time. And I think we were a lot of boats. I want to say 20 plus boats or something.
Oh, we
like
had,
that. I think
we probably had 20, 30, boats, back then. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what a great time. I mean, when you think about all of your travels and you've visited over 45 countries as part of the admissions process, what's one of your favorite Sloan travel memories?
Yeah. Lots of memories, but I will point this out, right? I'll point something out. I remember traveling with a former colleague, associate director, and people remember Angel Nabeiro, who's now in California with a family. I remember he and I were interviewing we were in Spain interviewing. So anyway, Hakon Brown says 26 boats and 96 of us in 2001. Exactly. So
2001.
Exactly. So Angel and I were interviewing in Spain, and we were staying in a hotel, and he got flu in the middle of the interview, and I had to take over his interviews. But the nice thing about it was that I was able to call a parent of an alum and ask for help in terms of finding a doctor, and he did recommend a doctor who saw Angel and told Angel to just rest and drink a lot of juice. So and there was also an occasion a couple of years ago when I was flying to Japan. Foolishly, I packed my pills in my suitcase. And
rookie mistake, Rod. Rookie mistake.
Yes, I know. I'll never make a mistake. Never a mistake. Arrived, in Tokyo without my suitcase, without my pills, and I asked. I sent messages to two alums. One was a Japanese doctor who's actually living in California, also in the class of '91. I had asked him for, if he knew of a doctor in Japan who could prescribe my pills. And, he gave me the information number and all that to contact. And then the other one was the head of the Sloan Society of Japan. I told him about my, that I didn't have pills. What he did, he was really amazing, very heroic. He talked to his friend who's a doctor, got pills in his name, bought them, and delivered them to my hotel. I mean, that's what Sloanies will do for you. Really, really amazing. And I'm grateful because that was the start of my trip. I was going to be on the road for, 2 more weeks. Without pills, I probably wouldn't be here. So thank you, Kohei, for doing that. So.
I think it's incredible that even after all of this time and so many classes, that so many people and you're able to keep in touch with so many alumni and keep that network alive. What's the one thing that you're looking forward to keeping these close contact with these relationships kind of going forward?
Well, now that I'm retired, I really I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. And now I did promise a lot of people who sent me emails and text messages that I will visit them. So now I really have to visit them, because if I don't, they'll be insulted. But I have all the time in the world now to travel. And that's something to look forward to, right? That's the power of the Sloan Network. I mean, they're all over the world, and people are telling you, come and visit me, come, spend some time, and I have all the time now to do that. And, very lucky that I chose to spend over half of my life here at MIT. So, and making all those friends. So I'll be coming to a city near you. So I'll be visiting you.
Oh, and Rod, I remember several years ago, probably about 10 years ago, you were in Amsterdam and I was living in Rotterdam, and we had dinner out in Amsterdam together.
Absolutely. That was my first foray to Peruvian food. And now I love Peruvian food. You introduced me to Peruvian food in of all places in Amsterdam. So
in Amsterdam. Well, exactly. That was delicious. That was absolutely fantastic. Yeah. I do think it's one of those things where, the class of 2001 says, okay, well, Rod must think that we're the best class, but so many classes must say that. And it's such a big population. But so I want to say thank you for actually acknowledging that 2001 is one of the best classes. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
I mean, you've seen a lot of things change over the course of the 30 years you've been at MIT Sloan. I mean, part of it in the admissions process that you have these 1-minute videos, and a nosy part of me says, how do you think about the potential for some bias in the videos versus the written essay? And how do you look at that, and how does that play into the admissions process?
Yeah. I mean, there is bias. There's no doubt about that. I will not deny it. But the bias is actually, to the advantage of the applicant, because when you're watching a video, you're no longer dealing with a piece of paper. You're dealing with a person, right? So you're hearing the person's voice, you're seeing the person's eyes, and so you give that person the benefit of the doubt, even though we're not supposed to give that person the benefit of the doubt. And plus, look, benefit of the doubt is just interviewing that person, right? Mm-hmm. So that person still needs to come up to speed, and and still have the things that that we want. But I think the video has helped because it really has humanized the application process. You're not just dealing, and here's the other thing also, which is very important. And people think that because we have all the data with AI that you could moneyball, the application. And this, Kerry, you read applications for us. I mean, we read every single file, right? So, you give them that benefit of the doubt, and even interview them, and and sometimes you'll be surprised. There are people who may not look impressive on paper turn out to be excellent candidates, but more importantly, excellent alumni. There are many people who I would say became very good students at Sloan who came from the wait list, right? Mm-hmm. And many of them who are very successful alumni who also came from the wait list. So part of me leaving after 33 years now at MIT is I know where the skeletons are. It's exact, and I will carry them to the grave, and I will not reveal. But that's the thing is that and really, the privilege of doing this job for 33 years is you learn from your mistakes. I learn from mistakes, and you adjust, and you see alumni, do well. And I remember when I started this job, you remember Jeff Barks, right? I mean, who retired also in 99. When I was new, I was tough. I was really, really tough, right? I mean, that's what you do in admissions. When you're new, you don't want to be a softie, so you're tough. And then the older folks are, soft. And Jeff used to be soft. I mean, he would, there are decisions that he would reverse. I wouldn't, it's like, oh, but why did he admit this person? And and now as I grow older, I feel the same way too. It's because your perspective changes. You see people. And Kerry, this when you were reading, application. I mean, the goal of the application process was to predict success, right? Success in the classroom, but also success beyond the classroom, success as an alum. And I think that's what we do in the admissions office. It's not just who would be successful in the first semester core, right? But it's who will be successful, alumni. And and I'm happy, I'm happy that we were right most of the time. So yeah.
On average, you were right?
Maybe more than average, exactly. But I would tell you, I've also been wrong. I've also been wrong because there are people who turn out to be really successful, and I did not predict that they will be successful, and they did, and really, really surpassed my expectations too. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. And when I think about that admissions process and, sometimes reading the applications and things like that, somebody's asked the question, are the second round of admissions for the MBA a way of just increasing the average GMAT of the entry class?
No. And I tell you, for those of you who have siblings or children applying to business schools, second round or the third round, those are the tougher rounds. And that's because we use those rounds to round out the class, right? So if you have too many consultants or too many, investment bankers, right, you make it up by admitting fewer consultants or fewer, investment bankers. So second round is really tough, and that's why the metrics are very high, because that's how you differentiate yourself. And so my advice to people is apply in the early rounds. And by the way, this is true of, if you're, in college, of course, there's the early, right, early, what do you call it, the early decision, right, early action, and then regular. So in grad school, apply in early round. That's what I would recommend. Yeah.
It's a good recommendation, and then hopefully the thick envelope comes sooner.
Yes, they still get the thick envelope though, but they know that they're getting the thick envelope. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, we are with a group of alumni. I'm celebrating our 20th reunion with the Sloan Class of 01. So, just thinking about that, what can the alumni do to support the admissions process?
Well, I mean, there are many ways. One is, if you know of an outstanding candidate, please reach out to to the admissions office. Donna Levinson is the assistant dean of admissions. Donna is a graduate of MIT, double degrees from MIT, bachelor's and a master of science in management. Reach out to her. But I would say also, try to find out if that person really wants to be here. I mean, don't just send us emails saying, I know this outstanding candidate, right? But find out that we are really that person's, top choice, before calling us, because that is important. We want people who really want to be here. But do let us know. I mean, by all means, do let us know. There are also opportunities to call admits and and congratulate them and convince them to come here. And also this summer, you will hear from the admissions office asking for volunteers at our events. These are going to be virtual events. So if you do get the invitation, I encourage you to please, participate, because alumni participation is very important. I think that's one way that distinguishes our presentations from other schools, is because we have a lot of alumni. And I've heard that from students who are now alumni, and they tell me that our presentation is different because they saw a lot of alumni invest their time. They go there, they spend 3 hours, in a city and talk to applicants. So I think that is important. The annual fund, let's not forget about that. It's also very important. It is something that the school uses to support the students. And one of the privileges of doing this job is to be able to see outstanding students, who are first generation, low income. In fact, I'm dealing with one right now whose budget is short, so we're trying to, see if we could cover that delta. So we're doing our best to do that. But this person started out, he's Brazilian, actually. He started out, both parents are, did not even finish elementary school, learned English on his own, started out selling food outside the military headquarters in Brazil. And he founded his own nonprofit organization, and so, so those are the kinds of people we want here, because they're making the world a better place, right? And so,
right.
Yeah.
Quite an entrepreneur, and honestly, part of the reason that I personally have endowed a fellowship for needy student for Sloan, because I feel like those are the kind of people we want to be coming from Sloan, and so I'm privileged to be able to support the school in that way. And I love hearing stories like that of students that you've helped find for the school. So
well, thanks, and thank you, Kerry. Thank you for that, and also thank you to the alumni, who have donated, who've started their own scholarship fund. So really, thank you, because it means a lot to those students. Yeah. And our students need them too, because they have to be exposed to these folks, who work hard, played by the rule, right, and became successful, despite challenging circumstances. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they have a different story to tell, right? So that it helps all of us.
Right. Yeah.
And I would say I'm a little curious. You talked a little bit about you've had some mistakes and there have been bodies buried a little bit. How do you determine what was a mistake or an unexpected success in the admissions decision? And this is a question that came in, and that also reminds me to tell everyone, if you have questions, please submit them by Q&A and we can get to them. But has that changed? Have those norms of or the nature around the school changed? How do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you a story. There was one person we put on the wait list, and he just sat on the wait list. And then we, finally admitted him. Was in school, and after he finished school, started, created a company. I'm not going to give away his name because I think people will know. Yeah, exactly. So, and next thing we knew, the company was acquired for $1 billion. So. Right. So it was like, that was a mistake, right? I mean, why did we see that? Why did I not see that? Right. Why did this person have to be on the wait list? Why, so that is a mistake, which I'm glad that we corrected. And so and we're, happy to be associated with this person. Yeah.
So if you think about that,
$1 billion mistake. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Oops. Kind of related to that, what words of wisdom would you leave your successor? Or I would also say, what would you tell yourself in 1989 when you first got the job that now?
Right. Yeah. Right. I would probably say know the students. I think it is important, right? Again, I hate to use this word, know your product, right? I mean, know your students, right? Because that's the only way you can calibrate. Because you will see, there are two things you get to see now, right? One is the data, the application. The other is the person. When you get to know the person, you see that there is, then you can calibrate. Yeah, because there are things that, in the first place, it's a 30 or 40-minute interview, so you really don't get to know the person, right? And that piece of paper is, I don't know, about 20 pages, but it's not enough to show who you are. And in an ideal world, you'd probably want to spend half a day with a person so that you get to know that person. So I think by getting to know the students, you can calibrate. And I think that is the one thing that sets us apart from other schools, because we're a small school, right? I mean, you get to know everyone within 2 years. And so you can't do that in a 1,000 person school. It's very hard. It becomes a transaction, right? And, and here it's really more of a, I mean, you build relationships with them. Yeah. So I think my advice to, future admissions directors or assistant deans is, get to know your students. That's the only way you learn to do your job well. Yeah.
Oh, that is a good piece of advice, is to get to know the students. And I would say in a class size of 350 or so, it is possible to know pretty much everyone. And 20 years out, I have a great pot of friends that are texting me right now.
Okay, that's right.
And I love those relationships. They are special and precious to me. And the Alumni Network is really quite unique. Yeah. Thinking about it over the years, has the applicant profile or the student profile changed over the last couple of decades? Are we looking for younger, older, different entrepreneurial aspects, or standard industries or government? Or has any of that profile changed?
No, I think we're still looking for the same folks. I think what really has changed is that we're seeing more applicants from countries you did not see when you were a student, Kerry. I mean, you'll remember back probably in the 90s, there were back in the 90s, you probably had a lot of Japanese students, few Chinese students, right? There were probably hardly any students from Africa or the Middle East, but that has changed, and we're seeing a lot more students now coming from Latin America. We're seeing, applications, not just applications, but students coming from the African continent, and it's not just East Africa, but also West Africa and South Africa, and the same thing in Asia. I mean, I think we've covered the whole world now, and not to forget India. And I think this year we have the most number of Australians ever, in the class. So I think that has changed. But here's the really, really interesting thing, because when I started in '88, I remember, people in admissions, I mean, we were trying to run away from that technology label, right? Right. Right. And now it's amazing how we've embraced technology. And I think that's one thing that really sets us apart from other schools. So, really, and the other thing also is, I remember the first time I heard the word sustainability was probably around maybe 2006, 2007. Rick Locke, Rick Locke, who's now the provost of Brown.
Over at Brown, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Used that term, and probably one of the pioneers, and and now we're doing sustainability, which is actually great. Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. And you think about all of those countries that have become part of the class, they've also fed part of the fabric of the of the institution, because that's where the trips and treks have come from, right? Students who have said, oh yes, I want to have this trip to Africa and go to visit all of these different countries. Right. And we went to Peru, and we went over to China, et cetera. So it's good to see that profile change.
Right. Yeah.
So are there any established predictors or early indicators of future success in candidates that you see?
Yes, I think there, so you see early successes, right? So you always look for past examples, past successes, because those are good predictors of future success. Evidence of overcoming challenges. So you always want to see that, right? Of people who've met challenges and then face challenges, right? And overcome these challenges. So those are really, really good predictors of success. So those are things that you look for. Early struggles. So you look for those things as well. Yeah. And they will show how. So faced with obstacles, they can take down those barriers. Yeah.
And kind of thinking about that, and the taking down the barriers and the sustainability story, as you think about what the world needs now, what do you think MIT Sloan offers to solve some of these challenges, some of these complexities, having seen everyone come through the door?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we have these. I think we have much more of this now when you were a student. These action learning projects that we have. We've expanded it to. Many countries used to be G Lab in South America. Now we have China Lab, India Lab, and I hope that we can reinstitute the travel. I hope that the school will lift the moratorium on travel, because that would really give. These are different from treks, because treks, you parachute down a country, you're there for 1 or 2 weeks, you never really meet locals. But with G Lab, China Lab, India Lab, I mean, you're on the ground for over a month, and you work with locals. You get to eat with them, and so it's really living in a, in a foreign country, right? I mean, and you bring those back to the classroom. Those are the experiences that you bring, that you bring back. So, so those are things that I think that we're doing at Sloan. I guess to give students a real world, experience.
All right. So as you wind down, you're retired now. You officially retired at the end of last month. So what are you looking forward to next? Travel's on the list, but what's the next thing you're thinking about?
Right. Well, I think part of the process of retirement is rediscovering yourself. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll start to discover myself. My identity, as you know, is tied to my work in admissions. So Google Rod Garcia, you see MIT, right? So maybe I hope that in 20 years, if you Google Rod Garcia, it will be something else. So maybe that's part of my rediscovery process. I am taking actually an early retirement, so so I'm not full retirement, age yet. But I want to do that while I'm healthy. Right, so that I can explore and and explore the world. See Sloan friends from around the world, while my liver is still strong. Oh, that's the other thing too. That's another requirement of the job, right? You have to have a very strong liver. Exactly, exactly, because when you meet Sloanies,
that's so awesome, Rod, because it's so true.
Exactly. So that is that is something. So I'm really looking forward to that. But also, really, to me, it's reconnecting with MIT, reconnecting with alumni. I was supposed to go to 50th birthday in Spain this September. So we're moving that because Spain hasn't opened yet. That's going to be in June. So that's something, to look forward to. So it's great. And the thing is that I don't have to worry about coming back when I travel or hurry back, or I don't have to get up in the morning and check and respond to emails. So that's something I really look forward to. Yeah.
Oh, that is so going to be wonderful. Just to make a programming note, if alumni are interested in making a gift in honor of Rod, we have set up a Fellowships for Inclusions Fund that will be in a link in an email that the office will send out. Rod, I do want to. Lauren's going to pop back on in a second, but I do want to say. Cheers to you, Rod, because
thank you.
so many years of absolutely fun, exciting times, and seeing you at admissions events and being a part of the class with you. I thank you very much. And I appreciate all of that you've done for MIT Sloan. So cheers to you, Rod.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers. I hope, cheers. I wish you had warned me because I'm drinking water. I wish I had.
Yeah, see?
Right.
Well, we'll bring Lauren back on.
Yeah. Well, before you do that, Lauren, can I just say one, just parting words. As much as we're enjoying our conversation, I also just wanted to point out that there were a few Sloan alumni we lost this year, and I just wanted to acknowledge, people like Lucia Brower, Mauricio Levitin, Bill Crandall from the class of the 91, Oren Moked. These are all great Sloan friends who, unfortunately, are not with us and will not be with us for the next, reunion. But these are people I knew as students, and and I hope if their family are joining us, I hope that we're thinking of you. So thank you very much, and I hope I will be invited at the next reunion. So thank you. Yeah.
You're definitely invited to our class, Rod.
Anytime. Oh yes, definitely. Thanks. Yeah.
Rod, according to the chat that's been very active, I don't think you'll lack for an invitation anywhere in the world for a drink.
Okay.
And we'll send you that information. Yeah. I can't thank you both enough. To the alumni who are attending, as soon as your classes found out about Rod's retirement, I think it was just a week ago, you all contacted him to do a program, and we knew that we had to do one for everyone. So Rod and Kerry, thank you so much for doing this at the last minute. I wanted to share a bit about the chat with both of you, so it will be no surprise to either of you that you have big fans in the class of 2001. Kerry, many of your classmates are here asserting that they are the best class, but they are being contradicted by classes of 2006, 1991, and then someone who snuck in outside of a reunion year who says that 98 and 99 are the best classes. So I'll leave you all to figure that out. And a mention of the Tokyo pub crawl. So Rod, I think your liver is definitely
the pub crawl, yes. I can talk about liver now because I cannot be fired, right? For talking about that. That's right. I couldn't do that if I was still an employee.
And Kerry, nobody was shocked that you were prepared with champagne. So what a wonderful toast and a wonderful tribute to Rod, your years at Sloan.
Thanks. Thank you very much. And I hope that when we all see each other again, that we will be toasting champagne.
In person.
100%.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks.
both so much. And thanks everyone for attending, and have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks. We'll see you at reunion. Okay.